probable places to have an earthquake. It would seem to me that if they were going to plan a contingency, that they would have done something, where one of the quakes has been happening, like maybe the Philippines or maybe Yellowstone or something like that. But to plan it in Haiti is a little bit low probability, and the odds of those two mutually exclusive events actually happening are astronomical. Couple that with the fact that the Americans were actually dreadfully slow and ill-prepared to respond to this from a medical standpoint. It was actually the Israelis that had 2 jets land and had a fully modern hospital up and running within hours of the quake.
Right. I did see some reports about people saying that there might be some trafficking going on. I wasn't able to get some confirmation on this, but I did see the early reports on this. There could be, this trafficking, organ trafficking issue that happened that was busted earlier last year, if you're familiar. That involved some people who were in custody in the War on Terror. When that came out, that was kind of shocking. I was telling people, for years, this was like taboo in my circles. I have Jewish family and friends, and I mean, that's like, you can't get more taboo than that. Somebody say, they're harvesting Palestinian organs, and then all of a sudden this huge organ trafficking ring gets busted, and they find out, oh yeah, by the way, some of their sources are people in the jails. I was like, what? Who's the report? I found it was like Guardian, BBC. I'm like, whoa, oh boy, that's hot. That's a hot story, man, and nobody wanted to touch it. And that's the unfortunate reality in this country. You can't really talk about certain things because people don't know how to interpret information. They think, oh, you must be against or for certain countries or issues. It's hard for people to be objective about anything involving Israel. But of course, like you pointed out, Israel landed in Haiti, and sure enough, a lot of early reports said that there might be some trafficking again of some of the people that are can't be saved, or who knows. They're going to take those organs. It sounds crazy, but the value of organs on the black market is something that's extremely. If you study the black market, they trade in everything, not just cocaine and heroin, guns and everything like that. The black market includes diamonds, it includes organs, nuclear products, all kinds of things. So there is an interest. Very powerful people are interested in harvesting organs. Is it possible? I don't know. Of course, I guess anything's possible. But I was not able to find direct confirmation of that report. So, something to think about.
Man, I tell you, there's a lot going on out there. I have a tendency to think that maybe ethics have always been lacking when we're talking about governments, whether we're talking about King John or whether we're talking about Hitler or whether we're talking about our own government. The temptation to take advantage of the disenfranchised it seems to be just beyond people, whether it's taking control of the world's health care or manipulating world currencies. One of the conspiracies that my listeners keep writing in about is this conspiracy that global currencies are being manipulated. Now it's not much. It's only, a fraction of a percent per day. But the banks, the global banks, and even the national banks in this country are putting their depositors' money into these money trading operations, and they're actually making between 40 and 60% interest on their money by moving, not interest, profits, by moving depositors' money sometimes 1,000, 1,500 times a month in and out of these global currencies, manipulating them back and forth. Meanwhile, they're not lending their money to their communities, which are in desperate need for credit and access to capital to start businesses. And because of this, the ripple effect, at least what we've been able to see, is that small business is about out of business.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Yeah, you couldn't be more right, actually. The interesting thing about the global currency situation, for a long time it was rumored to have a world centralized banking system. After this economic collapse, which many people out there know, that myself and other people, famous people like Ron Paul, Alex Jones even, there are people out there who were for years talking about how they're pumping up the economy, they're going to crash it, they're going to intentionally create a vacuum. We see what you're doing. We know about this derivatives market. I mean, there were people talking about this before the crash hit. A lot of them. My friend and attorney Gary Fielder, he's one of them. He came out with a film a while ago called "The Gig Is Up." It's on Google Video for free. My point is that when the crash happened, almost every major publication, and you can't get more credible than some of these publications like Time and Washington Post and New York Times, came out discussing. First of all, they were using terminology like the New World Order. And the second, which is out of nowhere, I was like, okay, well, thank you for you're going to fuel so many conspiracy theories again. But, you know, that was a shock to me that they would use that terminology again, bring it back from the 90s. I thought that was a dead terminology, but it's alive and well. And they even used the terminology of global currencies and world trading agreements with centralized banks on the global scale. Some of the reports I was reading, even the op-ed pieces from the major publications, you couldn't get more specific with stuff I was hearing about in conspiracy theories 20 years ago. I mean, it was like they read those same books and then said, yeah, well, maybe this is the solution. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, it's a solution, but you do realize this was foreseen by a lot of conspiracy theorists. If you want to fuel the conspiracies more, then please continue talking like this because you're not helping the situation. And my whole point is, obviously that is the interest. I mean, the old game of empire here is it's as old as time, but the situation we're facing, they're manipulating the markets because they have to have their control. There has to be a valve at the top. And, you know, it's obvious if you look at the last 60-year span of foreign politics and actual foreign affairs. It's obvious there is a common direction. There is a common agenda. And that agenda is centralization, larger trading agreements, and more deregulations. It's going in one direction. It only goes in one direction. And it takes advantage of as many crises as it can. That's the history of this international foreign policy when it comes to economics specifically. These trading agreements tend to do that. Now, we saw this with the European Union. It was almost immediately when it came about that the currency was pushed, and everyone said, no, that's too quick, and then it came out. The stability of that currency is helping sell the idea of maybe a world currency. And that stability of a global currency is actually very popular among countries like Russia and China, who openly declared their support for a world currency. I don't know if you can recall the Time magazine article where China called for a world currency.
Yeah, they've actually done it twice, and it's interesting because China is artificially, by decree, holding their currency artificially low to stimulate foreign investment, and it's working. Every country is investing in China. We're buying truck gliders from them right now for our electric car company. So I know exactly why they're doing it, but you're exactly right. Currencies have condensed of late basically into four major currencies. You have the euro, the pound, the yuan, and the dollar. And it's even the dollar and the yen kind of competing with one another, although I don't see the yen surviving much longer.
I agree with you there. A lot of people are talking about the collapse of the dollar. Collapse of the dollar is possible. It might not be quick to come. If it is something that happens quickly, I would be the first to come out and say this was intentional, and there's probably going to be, like, remember how the Patriot Act was passed within a few days. They said, oh, we're going to quickly respond. If there's any sudden collapse of a currency, it's probably intentional, and then there's probably some legislation that'll be pushed rather quickly. Of course, any legislation will be accepted in a crisis like that without even reading it. So you have to remember, when people talk about the collapse of a currency, I say, well, yeah, if it happens, of course it's going to be intentional, but nobody's going to care. Everyone's assets. I don't have liquid assets. I don't have any liquid assets, but then again, I'm smart with my money. I try to keep my money out of. I try to keep my money in real assets. But I know a lot of people who, first of all, how many people do you know that live check to check? I mean, everyone lives paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, everyone I know.
A lot of people Yeah, and then everyone has their investments. And how many people have, even the middle class, the upper middle class, the upper class, they all have their investments. A currency collapse would mean you would gain, 90 some odd % of the people's support for whatever legislation you pass, so long as you get them their money back. They don't care what they have to do.
Well, I always say that it would be an easy sell if they just came to the people and said, look, we really need to, for instance, come up with the Amero, because there's too much disparity between the Canadian dollar, the U.S. dollar, and the peso.